In the world of construction, where the stakes are sky high, a single piece of paper can literally be the difference between a successful project and a legal nightmare. And today, we're going to pull back the curtain on that exact document, the letter of acceptance. All right, just imagine this for a second. You're a contractor and you've just landed a massive, game-changing project. I mean, the champagne is popping, high fives are flying all around. But then, in the back of your mind, this little question starts nagging at you. Okay, you've won the bid. So what happens now? What's the actual legal trigger that turns this celebration into a real, honest-to-goodness plan of action? Well, that trigger is the letter of acceptance, or what everyone calls the LOA. The best way to think about it, it's the official, legally binding handshake. It's that exact moment a bid stops being just a promising proposal and becomes a real, live project. So what is it, really? Formally speaking, an LOA is a document the client sends to the contractor. And here's the absolute kicker. It means a contract has been formed. This is so, so important. Why? Because it creates a legal relationship right then and there. We're talking way before that final, super detailed contract with all the fine print is even drafted, let alone signed. And this brings us to a really critical point, one that trips up even seasoned pros all the time. You have got to understand the difference between a letter of acceptance and its, let's call it, a much less powerful cousin, the letter of intent. They sound similar, right? But believe me, in the eyes of the law, they are worlds apart. Okay, look at this. The difference is just night and day. On the left, you've got the LOA. It's legally binding. Full stop. It is the contract. That means it immediately kicks off real obligations, like the contractor having to go get performance security. Now, look at the LOI on the right. It's usually non-binding. It's basically a we're thinking about it letter. It shows they have an intention to do something, but it doesn't actually create a contract. So let's just boil it all down. A letter of intent is basically a promise to maybe make a deal down the road. But a letter of acceptance, that is the deal. It is the contract. And confusing one for the other isn't just a simple mix-up. We're talking about something that could have massive legal and financial consequences. So if this one letter has so much power, what actually gives it its legal teeth? Come on, let's take a look under the hood. We're going to dissect the anatomy of a valid LOA and see what makes it stick. For an LOA to actually hold up, it needs these essential pieces. First, you need the parties clearly identified, no confusion about who's on the hook. Then, a totally unconditional acceptance. That means no ifs, ands, or buts because that could accidentally turn it into a counteroffer. The price and the start date have to be crystal clear. Those are the foundations. It also spells out the performance security needed. And of course, it has to be signed by people who actually have the authority to make the deal. If you're missing any of these, you might just be holding a piece of paper, not a binding contract. But here's the thing. The LOA itself is really just the cover letter for a whole stack of documents. It pulls in all these other things by reference, and that's what creates the full agreement. You've got the original bid, contract conditions, drawings, the whole shebang. But pay super close attention to the technical specifications. This is where the devil is truly in the details. For example, the specs might mention how you're supposed to handle contaminants found in the soil. We're talking nasty stuff like lead, asbestos, or hydrocarbons. A single detail buried deep in an attachment like that can have enormous cost and schedule implications. And by accepting the LOA, the contractor is agreeing to all of it, whether they've read that line or not. Okay, so we've torn apart what an LOA is. Now let's talk about what it does. How does this one piece of paper actually get the gears of a massive construction project turning? This whole process really shows you how central the LOA is. So after the client picks a winner, they issue the signed LOA, the contractor then acknowledges it, and that triggers the next big step, getting the performance security, the bonds. Once that's locked in, the project gets its official green light, the commencement date is set, and work can finally get started. And you'll notice, the big formal contract might get signed way later, but thanks to the LOA, the project is already legally up and running. All right, so we've looked at the definition, we've broken down its parts, and we've seen its role in the whole process. So what's the one big thing, the key takeaway you absolutely have to remember about the letter of acceptance? Here it is. This is the bottom line. The LOA isn't just the end of the paperwork, it's the legally binding beginning of the work. It's the starting gun. It's the point of no return where all those intentions become real, solid obligations, and plans become legally binding actions. It is, without a doubt, the official start line for the entire project.
And that really leaves us with one final thought to chew on. In a world that's all about moving fast and making handshake deals, how critical is having a formal, unambiguous starting line like this? Well, in high stakes industries like construction, clarity isn't just a nice to have, it's absolutely everything.